Barry, what can we learn about consciousness from appreciating language?
So when we have consciousness as moments of experience, we think of these as individual, unique, and yet we actually want to capture what's the same or different in our experience over time. So we don't just say, here's a visual experience of red. We want to say, these are all experiences of the same color red. So we use categories and classifications. In other words, the passing show can get assembled into larger, more meaningful groups when we use language to classify and categorize. But how do we do that? How do we connect up these bits of consciousness with something stable, which is classifying the world and not just my own experience, and which is communicable between you and me? So that's part of the fascination about how the two combine. But equally, I think we want to say, look, here's something to notice. There's something very special that we are the only creatures, the only animals who have language. This is a species-specific property. And at the same time, we might be the only creatures who not only have minds, but know we have minds and can think about the contents of our own minds. Now, language, I think, is partly responsible for this way of thinking about the mind, our own and others, because when I use a sentence, when I say the euro is in decline, or I hope the euro is not in decline, I might say, I'm using that to both describe a way the world might be, but also to describe the way I see the world. So notice there's a kind of duality here, that we're both describing state of affairs and describing a state of mind that is presenting the world as being in that state of affairs. So I think language has got this ability to capture the contents of the mind and talk about them. Because I can say, Robert thinks the euro is in decline, and now by embedding that statement, the euro is in decline, which talks about an economy and a state of Europe, it's also being used to talk about a state of Robert's thinking. So I think language is one of the ways in which we codify our own experience, our own thinking, get hold of it, and are able to use it to represent our own minds and to represent and compare them with the contents of other minds.
So it seems that language then gives us the capacity to transform momentary experiences that we would just see in the moment into general principles that we can relate over time, so that we build up categories and meaning from the individual experiences.
That's right. And I think the way we learn language is probably because we're coordinating our experience with others by jointly attending to the same thing. So, I mean, when you see a parent and a young child and the child's learning language, the child's looking at an object, the parent's looking at an object. They're not just happening to look at the same thing. The child goes backwards and forwards from the parent's face to the object. They're jointly attending. And by coordinating their experience, when you introduce a word, it's almost like a sound label for that experience we're both having of that object, a candle, a ball. And then taking that word away and reusing it, it can be like a commemoration or a souvenir, a sound souvenir of that experience. And using the word can recreate in our minds the original experience. That's very powerful, because now we can take that and it's portable, and we can use it again and again to draw our attention, our own and others, to the same objects in the world, and in fact to objects that are no longer present. Now that breaks the connection that most animals are bound by to their present experience and environment. We're able to detach, we're able to think about things that are not present, and we're able to compare other parts of our life with now. That's a very powerful tool.
What about situations where language is impaired? Is consciousness impoverished in those cases?
I think it is. I mean, cases where you lose the capacity, and sometimes very strange cases. Case that was discovered here in London by Elizabeth Sharing, case that was discovered here.
Take a longer pause.
Right. sometimes it happens in very bizarre ways. Take a case that happened here in London, discovered by Elizabeth Warrington and Tim Challis. This is a case of a person who had lost all of their words for fruit and vegetables and just those words. So they could talk, they could use language normally, but could not recognize, pronounce, or even use words for fruit and vegetables. That's very strange. It's as if a whole shelf of meanings has just been taken away. And I think that case brought us starkly to terms with the fact that the mind really can be organized a little bit like a modern day computer, and especially where language and meaning is concerned, that there's just this independent way of hooking up to certain classifications. And if those go missing, there's not much you can do.
So if I'm thinking about this relationship between language and consciousness, and I lose some capacity of language, here's my question. Have I lost a component of consciousness so that I know that I'm me, I still have the sense of me, but I've just lost something? I can't say the names of fruits and vegetables, just like I've lost 2 fingers. I know it's me, I haven't changed, I'm just 2 fingers less. Or is there something really degraded about my personal sense? 2 different kinds of things.
2 very different kinds of things. And again, here we're looking at grades of consciousness and grades of language involving consciousness, because you can have a way in which you've just lost the word for an object, but you can still recognize the object. So here you've got a form of aphasia, I can't use the word, but you can have something much deeper than that, where you've lost not just the significance of the word as a piece of sound, meaning an object, but you don't recognize the object either. So you can have visual agnosias where you lose the whole meaning. Very obvious case is that sometimes stroke patients can't use the word glove. They've lost the word glove. What is that? Can't say. And it may be just that the word is missing, because if you say, is there a glove on the table? Yes. Can you reach for it? Yes. But other people can say, what is that? I've no idea. And you show them a glove and you say, what's this for? And they say, I don't know. Maybe it's for keeping coins in it. Maybe you put coins of different sizes in these. So that shows you, I think, that sometimes using a word like glove or table or chair or glass is actually part of structuring and categorizing the world. There's a whole concept that's giving meaningful order to what's appearing in visual consciousness. And perhaps the deeper loss of language can actually lead to the lack of the very categories that we use to classify our perceptual experience of the environment.
But that still doesn't eliminate my own personal sense of things, my own first-person experience. It will be degraded in different degrees, but it still won't change the absolute quality that I have an awareness.
Now that's interesting, because I think that's controversial and that needs to be investigated. Is it that the quality of experience stays just the same, that subjective feel of what's going on in me now, and I just can't classify or categorize it? Or if we lose the categories, the classification, language's contribution to organizing that consciousness, is the consciousness radically different? I suspect it is.